Hi class, in chapter 19 we're going to talk about commodity and futures. So this is kind of it's a longer chapter, but I'm only going to go through a few parts of it, and these are the parts that you're going to have to know for your test. So the two things I'm going to talk primarily about are futures contracts and futures markets. Futures contracts are a formal agreement or a contract between a buyer and seller for a commodity. You probably hear about this, I guess if you listen to financial news, you might hear about this, especially with oil. We commonly talk about futures prices with oil. And basically what it means is there's a seller, okay? A seller of oil for some time in the future. So you can choose to sell a barrel of oil 1 year from now. And you can also choose to buy oil 1 year from now, except you lock that transaction in place right now, as opposed to 1 year from now. So you can participate in future markets either as a speculator, okay, and speculators are trying to make big money out of this, or as a hedger. You're just trying to keep yourself from losing money. And I'll explain kind of those situations later on in the chapter. Okay, so either way, you have to take one position. Speculators, you either buy or sell contracts. I guess even hedgers, buy or sell contracts, one way or another, anticipating price changes. Okay, so if you take a long position, you anticipate a price increase. So let's say that a barrel of oil is selling for $10 right now. Okay? That means that in the future, okay, like if you were to buy a future contract of oil 1 year from now, you might guess it will be roughly around $10, right? Oil costs about $10 right now. If we don't see anything crazy happening in the next year, a barrel of oil will probably cost $10. Now, if you think, okay, that the price is going to increase, the price of oil is going to increase, and in 1 year from now, it's going to be $30, you'd probably be pretty smart to take a long position and lock in that barrel of oil at $10 instead of $30. On the other hand, the short position anticipates price decreases. So if you think that the price of oil is going to go down, okay, and you can get a barrel of oil 1 year from now for $10, well, you should probably lock that in. Or, I'm sorry, you would not want to lock that in. Okay? Instead, you might want to sell that barrel of oil to somebody else, okay, thinking that the price of oil will go down. Okay? So think about it. If you were a seller of a contract, okay, thus taking the short position in this particular instance, if you were the seller of a oil contract at $10 a barrel for 1 year from now, and the price of oil goes down, and it goes down to $5 per barrel, how great is that for you? You can just buy a barrel of oil for $5, and then that other person that you sold it to is forced to buy it from you for $10. So these contracts establish a future price. Okay? And the futures price is somewhat correlated, in fact, very strongly correlated to the current price or the spot price. Now, the spot price can be higher, lower, or actually exactly the same as the futures price. It just depends on what the general consensus is on what prices are going to do in the future. Okay? So again, if the spot price for oil right now is $10, you would think that the futures price a year from now is roughly around $10. But if people think that oil is going to go up, then the futures price is probably going to be a little over $10. If most people think that oil is going to go down, then for the most part, futures prices will probably be below $10. So now closing a futures contract. A futures contract is a real contract. So again, if you purchase a futures contract to buy oil 1 year from now for $10, 1 year from now, you are going to have to take a barrel of oil, right? And the other person who sold the contract is going to get $10. So you could, suppose maybe you don't want to take that oil and actually, physically have the oil. Let's say that you have a contract to buy oil. You could just sell a contract to sell it. right? And that'll offset the contract to buy. On the other hand, a contract to buy offsets a contract to sell. So for either of these positions, whether you take the long position or the short position, you do have to put down a good faith deposit when you purchase the contract, right? So if I were to want to buy a contract of oil for $10 a year from now, I might have to put down like $1 or so, and then pay the remainder 1 year from now. But there is some sort of margin. You do have to put down some sort of deposit. Now, many people that purchase futures contracts are speculators. They're trying to make a lot of money off of it. And like if you think the oil is going to go way up, you can purchase a contract of oil for $10, and if it goes to 100, you've made a ton of money. But many people are also hedgers. They're not out there to make a ton of money. What they're trying to do is reduce the risk of loss. Okay? They're just trying to play it safe, and that's how they use the commodity markets. So growers and other usually users of commodities or producers of commodities will hedge. So the airline industry, they oftentimes hedge. Let's say that oil is $10 a barrel right now, and they know that if oil gets over $20 a barrel, they cannot make money. Well, if oil is $10 a barrel for a year from now, they might buy a bunch of it up. Sure, the price of oil might go down, but at least at $10, they know that they're going to be okay and they're going to be able to stay in business. If oil were to shoot up to $50 a barrel, they would be in a lot of trouble. So all they're doing is they're hedging their bets. They're trying to play it safe by purchasing oil contracts. On the other hand, growers oftentimes use futures contracts as well to ensure that they make a certain profit. So let's say you're a grower of corn, and corn sells for $5 a bushel. Right now it's selling for $5 a bushel, and that's good because corn has to sell for at least $4.50 a bushel in order for you to make money as a corn farmer. Okay? Well, what you might do is you might take on a position where you sell corn at $5 a bushel 1 year from now. That way you've locked in a price of $5 per bushel. Now, if the price of corn goes down to $4, hey, you have a contract in place and you could sell your corn for $5 a bushel. That's great. And that's what hedging is. Now, on the other hand, if corn were to shoot way up and go up to $20 a bushel, you could still only sell it for $5. So you've kind of locked yourself. You've locked yourself out of some really, really big gains, but by hedging, you've made sure that you could at least stay in business. So you're passing that risk on to somebody else. You're passing it on to speculators who are buying and selling these futures contracts. So you take a look at that last bullet point, you're foregoing the possibility of a large return for price certainty, right? You're taking the sure thing. So those are commodity futures. Another very common kind of future that's sold, and you might have actually seen these futures, or at least seen the prices of them online, stock index futures. These speculators also buy and sell stock index futures in anticipation of changes in stock prices. So we talked about some of the most famous indices, like the Dow Jones. Dow Jones Industrial Average is by far the most famous one. After the market closes or before the market opens, you can buy and sell stock index futures. So if you think the market is going to open way up, you would then maybe want to buy stock index. You might want to buy futures in the Dow. On the other hand, if you think the market's going to go way down, you might want to sell futures in the Dow. But the stock index futures are a really, really good way of seeing what the market sentiment is while the markets are closed. So the stock market is generally open from 6:30, I believe it's 9:30 Eastern time to 4 o'clock Eastern time. Might be wrong, but it's right around that time. I believe it's 9:30 to 9:30 a.m. Eastern time to 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. And during those times, you can go online and you can see how is the Dow doing, how is the S&P doing, how is the Nasdaq doing. But once the markets close, right? There's no, I mean, there is some trading going on, but those indices are not updated. So if you want to know, what's the market going to do tomorrow, you could check those stock index futures, and those would give you a really good idea of market sentiment. Because if the index futures are down, it means generally that people think the stock market is going to go down. So maybe some bad news came out, right? So all of a sudden people are selling those stock index futures. All right, and that does it for this chapter. That's pretty much the end of the book. There's one more chapter that's kind of just a review, a very, very light review of the entire book. But for the most part, this is pretty much the end with just one mini chapter to go.